In the autumn of 1888, London's East End was a world cloaked in shadow. Whitechapel, a district of cramped tenements and flickering gaslights, pulsed with the heartbeat of hardship. The air was thick with the stench of coal smoke, gin, and despair. Poverty clung to every corner, where families huddled in single rooms, and the streets teemed with those cast aside by fortune. The fog, ever present, seemed to carry secrets, curling through alleys like a living thing. It was here in this forgotten corner of the world's greatest city that a phantom emerged, a killer whose name would echo through the ages, Jack the Ripper. Whitechapel was no stranger to hardship or danger. Its labyrinthine streets were a haven for petty thieves, street vendors, and those who scraped by on society's fringes. Women, often driven to desperate measures to survive, walked the alleys at night, their footsteps muffled by the fog. Men lingered in dimly lit pubs, drowning their troubles in cheap ale. The police, overstretched and underfunded, patrolled with weary eyes, accustomed to brawls and minor crimes. But nothing could have prepared them, or the city, for what was to come. On August 31st, 1888, the first tragedy struck, shattering the fragile rhythm of Whitechapel's nights. Mary Ann Nichols, a 43-year-old woman worn by life's relentless struggles, was found lifeless in Bucks Row, a narrow, dimly lit street. Her life had been taken with chilling precision, her body marked by the work of a blade wielded with cold intent. The wounds, though carefully inflicted, spoke of a purpose beyond mere violence, a calculated act that left the police stunned. No screams had pierced the night, no hurried footsteps had betrayed a fleeing figure. Only the fog, thick and silent, seemed to hold the truth of what had happened. The discovery sent ripples of unease through Whitechapel. Mary, known to locals as Polly, was one of their own. A woman who had faced the same hardships, walked the same streets. Her death was not just a loss, but a warning. Constables canvassed the area, questioning bleary-eyed residents and late-night wanderers, but found no answers. The killer had vanished, leaving behind only questions and a growing sense of dread. Was this a random act born of Whitechapel's chaos, or the opening move of something far darker? As dawn broke, casting a pale light over the cobblestones, word of the tragedy spread. Women gathered in doorways, whispering warnings to one another. Men cast suspicious glances at strangers in the crowd. The police, led by Inspector Frederick Aberline, a seasoned detective with a reputation for tenacity, began their work in earnest. They mapped the scene, interviewed locals, and scoured the alley for clues, but the killer had been meticulous. No blood-stained footprints marked the ground. No discarded weapon offered a lead. The fog, it seemed, had swallowed the truth whole. Whitechapel's residents, already hardened by life's cruelties, felt a new weight settle over them. The streets, once familiar, now felt treacherous. Gaslights meant to offer safety cast long, flickering shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Mothers pulled their children closer, urging them to stay indoors. The pubs, usually alive with laughter, grew quieter as patrons spoke in hushed tones about the murder in Bucks Row. Yet this was only the beginning. As September loomed, the fog thickened, and Whitechapel braced for a terror that would test its resilience. The killer, still nameless, was already planning his next move, his shadow blending seamlessly with the night. Was he a local, hiding in plain sight among the market stalls and crowded tenements? Or a stranger, drawn to Whitechapel's chaos like a moth to a flame? The city held its breath, unaware that the worst was yet to come. Who was this figure stalking the fog-choked streets? The stage was set for a mystery that would grip the world and defy answers for centuries. The horror that began with Mary Ann Nichols did not end in Bucks Row. Whitechapel, already shaken, was about to plunge deeper into a nightmare. On September 8, 1888, the killer struck again, his shadow falling over a quiet yard on Hanbury Street. Annie Chapman, a woman whose life had been marked by loss and struggle, was found lifeless, her body bearing the same chilling signature as Mary's. The blade's work was precise, almost deliberate, as though the killer saw himself as an artist of the night, crafting a grim masterpiece in the fog. The scene left seasoned constables pale. Annie's death was not a random act, but a calculated one, suggesting a mind both cunning and controlled. The police, now under intense scrutiny, searched the yard for any trace of the killer, but found nothing. No footsteps, no dropped belongings, only the silence of a crime committed under the city's nose. Neighbors, questioned at dawn, recalled no unusual sounds, no fleeting figures in the alley. The killer had struck and vanished, as if the fog itself had spirited him away. London's fear turned to panic. Two deaths, so similar, pointed to a single hand, a predator who hunted with purpose. The press, sensing a story that would sell, filled their pages with speculation, dubbing the unknown figure the Whitechapel Fiend. But a new name was about to seize the city's imagination. On September 27th, the Central News Agency received a letter, written in red ink, signed Jack the Ripper. It taunted the police, mocking their efforts to catch him. "I shan't stop," it declared, promising more shadows to fall. Was this the killer's voice, or a cruel hoax penned by an opportunist? The police couldn't be sure, but the name Jack the Ripper took root, chilling every heart in the city. The letter's arrival fanned the flames of terror. Whitechapel's streets, once bustling at dusk, grew quieter. Women walked in pairs, clutching shawls tightly, their eyes scanning the fog for danger. Men formed vigilante groups, patrolling with lanterns and makeshift weapons, determined to protect their own. Yet the killer remained elusive, his presence felt but never seen. The police, led by Inspector Aberline, worked tirelessly, but the East End's maze of alleys offered endless hiding places. Every lead fizzled, every suspect cleared. Then on September 30th, the Ripper struck twice in one night, a bold act that would become known as the double event. Elizabeth Stride was found in a dark courtyard off Burner Street, her life taken swiftly, as though the killer had been interrupted before he could complete his work. Less than an hour later, Catherine Eddowes was discovered in Mitre Square, her body marked by the same deliberate precision. The proximity of the crimes, committed under the noses of patrolling constables, stunned the city. How could one man move so quickly, so silently through a district on high alert? The double event shattered any hope that the killer was a mere opportunist. His movements were calculated, his knowledge of Whitechapel streets intimate. The police doubled their patrols, stationing officers at every corner. But the Ripper seemed to mock their efforts, slipping through their net like a wisp of fog. Rumors swirled. Was he a doctor, wielding a surgeon's skill, a butcher accustomed to the blade, or something else entirely, a figure born of Whitechapel's darkest corners? Whitechapel was a city under siege, its people haunted by a single question: how could this shadow strike again? By October 1888, Whitechapel was a pressure cooker of fear and frustration. The Metropolitan Police faced a nightmare unlike any in their history. The Ripper's crimes had sparked outrage, with newspapers blasting their every misstep. Crowds gathered outside police stations, demanding justice for the women lost. Vigilantes roamed the streets, their lanterns casting jittery light into alleys. But their efforts only deepened the chaos. The killer, it seemed, thrived in this turmoil, his shadow growing larger with every unanswered question. Inspector Frederick Aberline, a man whose lined face spoke of years in London's underbelly, led the hunt. His team combed Whitechapel, questioning anyone who might hold a clue. They interviewed bakers rising before dawn, laborers trudging home at dusk, and street vendors who knew every face in the market. Suspects emerged, men with erratic behavior, or those seen near the crime scenes. But none could be tied to the crimes. A leather apron found near Hanbury Street sparked rumors of a tradesman turned predator, but it led nowhere. The killer left no trace, no hint of his face or motive. The police's task was daunting. Whitechapel's population was a shifting tide of immigrants, transients, and locals, packed into tenements where privacy was a luxury. Alleys twisted like veins, offering countless routes for escape. Gas lights meant to deter crime were often dim or broken, cloaking the streets in shadow. The fog, ever present, blurred faces and muffled sounds, making witnesses unreliable. Yet the police pressed on, driven by duty and the weight of a city's fear. Then came another letter, more chilling than the last. Dubbed from hell, it arrived at the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, accompanied by a grim token, a small package that hinted at a connection to the crimes. The letter's tone was mocking, its writer claiming knowledge only the killer could possess. Was this Jack's voice, or another cruel prank? The police, wary of being misled, analyzed the handwriting, the paper, the words, but found no answers. Hundreds of letters flooded in, each claiming to be from the Ripper, clogging the investigation with false leads. The public's mood swung between terror and fascination. Newspapers, thriving on the story, printed every rumor, from tales of a mad doctor to whispers of a foreign assassin. Whitechapel became a dark spectacle, drawing curious outsiders who wandered its streets, hoping to glimpse the killer's path. Pubs buzzed with theories, each more outlandish than the last. Some saw the Ripper as a monster, others as a product of Whitechapel's despair, a reflection of a society that had abandoned its poorest souls. The police explored every angle. Could the killer be a local blending into the crowd? A sailor passing through London's docks? Or a man of means drawn to the East End's chaos? They questioned medical students, butchers, and even midwives, searching for someone with the skills suggested by the crimes. Yet every lead dissolved, leaving only frustration. The Ripper was a ghost, his presence felt in every shadow, but never seen. Was he watching from the crowd, mocking the police's efforts? Or had he already slipped beyond London's reach, leaving only his legend behind? November 1888 brought Whitechapel to the edge of despair. The Ripper's shadow had darkened every corner, turning familiar streets into a maze of fear. The police, exhausted but determined, patrolled tirelessly, their lanterns piercing the fog. Yet the killer remained a step ahead, his presence a constant, unseen threat. On November 9th, the terror reached its peak, delivering a blow that would haunt London for generations. Mary Kelly, a young woman whose laughter had once brightened Dorset Street's grim tenements, was found lifeless in her small room. The scene was one of profound loss, the work of a killer who had lingered, undisturbed, in the heart of Whitechapel. Unlike the previous crimes, committed in the open, this act was private, almost intimate, suggesting a boldness that chilled even the hardest detectives. Mary's death was the Ripper's most audacious strike, a grim crescendo that left the city reeling. The discovery shattered Whitechapel's fragile resilience. Mary, only 25, was known for her kindness, her spirit undimmed by hardship. Her loss felt personal to those who knew her, a reminder that no one was safe. The police sealed off Dorset Street, questioning neighbors who had heard nothing unusual in the night. The fog, as always, had cloaked the killer's movements, leaving no trace of his approach or escape. Inspector Aberline, his face etched with strain, vowed to find answers, but the trail was cold. Then, as suddenly as it began, the killing stopped. No more crimes bore the Ripper's chilling signature. No more letters taunted the police. The silence was as unnerving as the crimes, leaving Whitechapel to grapple with an absence as haunting as the killer's presence. Had he fled London, fearing capture, met his own end in the Thames's dark waters, or simply vanished into the crowd, resuming an ordinary life? The questions hung heavy, unanswered. The police sifted through a growing list of suspects. Aaron Kosminski, a local barber with a troubled mind, was watched closely, his behavior erratic enough to raise suspicion. But evidence was scarce, and he remained a shadow among many. Montague Druitt, a barrister whose life ended in tragedy shortly after Mary's death, was another name in the files. His sudden demise raised questions, but no proof tied him to the crimes. Wilder theories pointed to figures of influence, a royal, a physician, even an artist. But these were fueled by rumor, not fact. The investigation stretched on, but Whitechapel's wounds began to scar. The police, under pressure to move forward, shifted focus to other crimes, though the Ripper's file remained open. The community mourned its losses, holding quiet vigils for Mary, Annie, Elizabeth, Catherine, and Mary Ann. Their names, once at risk of being forgotten, were etched into the city's memory, a testament to lives taken too soon. Whitechapel's fog lifted, but the question lingered. Who was Jack the Ripper? The fog of 1888 has long since cleared, but Jack the Ripper's shadow remains. His crimes, brief yet devastating, left an indelible mark on London, reshaping its streets and its soul. Whitechapel, once a symbol of neglect, became a focal point for change, its struggles laid bare by the killer's hand. The Ripper's legacy is not just one of mystery, but of transformation, a dark catalyst for a city seeking light. The crime spurred advances in policing. The Metropolitan Police, humbled by their failure to catch the killer, adopted new methods. Detectives began keeping detailed records, mapping crime scenes with precision. Early forensic techniques, like fingerprinting, gained traction, though too late for Whitechapel. The Ripper's elusiveness exposed the limits of 19th century law enforcement, pushing it toward a modern era. Beyond policing, the crimes ignited a call for reform. Whitechapel's squalor, its overcrowded tenements, its lack of sanitation, could no longer be ignored. Journalists and reformers, moved by the victims' stories, demanded better conditions for the East End's poorest. Charities opened shelters, offering refuge to those like Mary Ann and Annie. The women's lives, though ended in tragedy, became a rallying cry for justice, not just for their killer's capture, but for a society that had failed them. Yet the mystery of the Ripper's identity endures, as compelling now as it was then. Modern investigators have tried to pierce the fog of history. In 2014, DNA from a shawl linked to Catherine Eddowes suggested a match to Aaron Kosminski, but the findings were disputed, the evidence too fragile to close the case. Letters, photographs, and witness statements have been re-examined, each offering tantalizing clues but no final truth. Was the Ripper a lone predator, driven by dark urges? A man of means, shielded by influence? Or a figure so ordinary that he slipped through history unnoticed? Theories abound, each adding layers to the enigma. Some point to Kosminski, his mental struggles a possible motive. Others favor Druitt, his tragic end a convenient close to the timeline. More fanciful tales involve royalty or secret societies, though these lack substance. The Ripper's anonymity fuels this speculation, turning him into a canvas for our fears and fascinations. He is no longer just a man, but a symbol, a question mark etched into the cobblestones of Whitechapel. Today, Whitechapel's streets bear little resemblance to 1888. The tenements have given way to modern buildings, the gas lights to electric glow. Yet the Ripper's presence lingers, drawing curious souls to guided tours that trace his path. Books, films, and podcasts keep his story alive, each offering a new angle on the unsolvable. The victims, too, are remembered, not as mere footnotes, but as women with lives, dreams, and struggles. Mary Ann, Annie, Elizabeth, Catherine, and Mary Kelly are no longer lost to the fog. Jack the Ripper is a puzzle we may never solve, a shadow we chase through history's alleys. His crimes, though distant, remind us of the fragility of safety, the weight of loss, and the enduring power of a mystery. Who was he? The answer, like the fog, may forever elude us. Who do you think Jack the Ripper was? Share your thoughts in the comments, and we'll meet you again in the fog. Thank you for journeying into the shadows of Whitechapel with us. Subscribe to Whispers and Warnings for more tales of mystery and history.